A few months ago, we had Phanteks M25 140mm on the table. That was a communication error from my side. I actually wanted to request the 120s. And B, they were amazing radiator fans, completely overkill for a case, but if you are trying to cool down water, absolutely great. And now finally, let's tackle the fans that were supposed to be tackled from the start, the 120mm version of Phanteks M25. This time spinning at up to 2000 RPM whilst pushing 84.3 CFM at up to 2.67 millimeters of H2O. Yeah, I'm betting my money on Radiator. But before we talk a word about the fan, let's take a look at the benchmarks. Starting off with the new case fan scenario, allowing two of these M25s to recycle the air inside a closed-off box, allowed the CPU to stay at a cozy 43.2 degrees C above ambient. This positions them at an amazing third place, right in between the Nokia NFA12X25 and Phanteks T30. Completely over the top, but amazing. And why over the top is because of the noise. Slowly lowering the fan speed at 10% steps created this line. Two things on that line. It's great as a whole. It beats things like the Montec fans, the iceberg thermal fans, and so on. But once you get to optimized fans, it's a different story. No chance against the noise to performance ratio of a Nokia NFA12X25 or even an Arctic P12. That being said, and I already said it in the 140mm video, these M25 fans are essentially a light version of a Phanteks T30. And this is even more true for the M25. The noise to performance line on the M25 looks very similar to the one of a T30, just like a bit offset. But unfortunately, the offset is in the wrong direction, so it never reaches the NFA12X25 level. Something that the T30 actually does, without breaking a sweat. But let's get to the category where M25 shined before, radiators. Letting the M25s in 120mm run wild on our 80mm thick radiator resulted in a water temperature of 10.9 degrees C hotter than ambient. That actually makes the M25 the best normal fan, or at least better than the NFA12X25. And if you ask why I said normal, it's because everything above the M25 is spinning at 3000 RPM or even higher. So yeah, at 2000 RPM, it's kind of a normal fan, and it's normal that the M25 is where it is. But what about the noise to performance ratio? Well, it's not as golden as it was for the M25 and 140. Even if it's still got a pretty good noise to performance ratio, given that it's relatively similar to the Cooler Master Mobius 120 OC, but compared to the Nokia NFA12X25, it's just not quite that. And compared to the Phanteks T30, yeah, again, it's the lower shelf version, not quite as good. It's not quite as silent or as well performing, depending on what you are aiming for. Performance-wise, they got their place on the market. They do not have the great noise-to-performance ratio of either a T30 or a 12X25, definitely not. But being a budget version of the T30, it's still a kind of a great deal. And they are a very interesting comparison to the A12, cause even if you don't have that ratio, what you do have is burst. Burst that puts it in front of the A12 in every chart in case you need it. But let's talk a bit about the fan. Both being called M25, they are very comparable to the 140mm version. They got the same 9-shot fan wing design, but heavily downscaled, quite heavily given that the 140 actually makes a real bend and this one kinda doesn't. But other than that, it's just a downscaled version. We got the same rubber around the holes and we got the exact same frame design, which is heavily inspired by the T30. RGB wise, we got the same thing, 12 LEDs hidden inside the central part of the fan. Again, everything looks nice and smooth and it's not really countable as long as you don't shine like a 500 watts light onto it, but it's good enough to be considered okay for 2023 standards. Connection-wise, it's again the same thing, a quite short 120mm long PVM cable that allows you to daisy chain all of them together, followed by 2 extensions to finish them off, which are about 30 centimeters long. For RGB we got again the same RGB shenanigans that Phanteks always does. Phanteks used that d-rgb connection, which is great if you have a Phanteks case and Phanteks ecosystem, and you can daisy chain all of them together and then daisy chain that to the case or to whatever else Phanteks stuff you have. But you still need the adapter. In case you don't have any Phanteks stuff, you can use the adapter, get back to 3-pin ARGB, which is okay. Other than that, we got the black version, but it also exists in white. As a whole, it's a great fan. Not quite the NF-A12X25 killer, of course not, and it's also not a T30 killer, of course not, but definitely something in that direction. For radiators, if you need to go 25mm, this is definitely one of the best options I have seen so far in the normal range. So far, very good overall performance. For radiators. Case scenario, not quite it. It got some amazing burst, but I also expected it to beat the noise to performance ratio of an Arctic P12, but it didn't, which it's still in the best 10 range, definitely, but I feel like the central part of the fan was designed for 140s. It's just too big. On the 140 it wasn't such an issue because you got that additional fan wing length at the end, but both the 140 and 120 have that 50mm diameter central hub, and I feel like on the 120 that just took a toll which could have been prevented by redesigning the central part to accommodate for the 120mm form factor. Price-wise, I can get a triple pack of these for about 45 euros, making it 15 bucks a fan, which is okay. It's upper segment, but it is still alright. So for who is this fan? For the people that are looking for a price-conscious performance boost. These might be slightly louder than A12s, but they can push some serious air in every situation. I believe they are still best used on radiators, because there the difference to a T30 or A12X25 is not the same as in the case scenario. And for a case, this is a bit overkill, especially at that fan speed. But okay, for today, this is going to be it for Phanteks and their M25s in 120mm. A huge thank you to them for sending it over. And on a side note, we also have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And of course, we still have channel memberships. If you're looking for a good way to sell your soul for an RG Premium emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to get a better spell checker, because mine changed 120 to 140 and that just shouldn't happen again. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the M25s in 140. I might have requested them because of a typo, but they ended up being amazing fans. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.